Back to third penny sales tax. I'll talk to Kim about the day at the legislature. And then the BDF, the subsidy, that's to the, Development Foundation. I'll talk to Chuck, but I think we need to bump that by 50,000, because remember, we subsidized the interest, or guaranteed the interest cost for the roll bank purchase. So that'll probably bump up to 65. Yeah. That is just kind of our catch-all, just in case. Yep. No, it never shows up as an expenditure, but that's how we account. We don't have expenditures for all of the money we're bringing in third penny. So that zeroes out the account. Street maintenance fund, we went through that. The big project next year besides the micro seal is going to be the Holly joint repair. And then another striping project. We're going to be doing striping every year. Similar to what we do with the micro surface. We'll rotate those about every 4 or 5 years. We'll hit all of our major streets that need striping. You know, in the next couple pages, our debt service. And Christina's put in there where we're at with those bonds. You know, like the convention center, we're in 13th year of 20, etc. We do. We've got a few that are going out. The Northeast Lift Express Avenue is going to go off after 18. Country Club Heights is going to go off after 19. So nothing huge, but eventually we'll start getting those paid off. And then you see on page 34 the Holly Dogwood project, that main sanitary sewer interceptor that we're talking about doing next year.
Oh, that big one.
That big one.
Is that 3-part one there?
Yep. Well, the 4-part one that we're looking at consolidating into one.
Do we think we can do it now with the cost?
Well, I don't know yet. Let's put it that way. It's gonna be kind of tight. Yeah, the South property, they could conceivably phase it starting with the north end, but probably not very far. Let's put it that way.
How much of our bonding capacity are we using?
I'd have to look, but we've got plenty of bonding capacity. Our bonding capacity now is pretty low, so we can borrow all kinds of money. You just got to pay for it on the back end. I know. Gosh darn it. And then also proposed in there is a Redwood Boulevard mill and overlay. That would be similar to what we did on Sioux from Holly to Park a couple years ago. But this would be on Sioux and Redwood from Holly around to Split Rock. And then associated with that would be some water or storm sewer repairs at Split Rock and Holly that we talked about, or Split Rock and Redwood that we talked about last time. Extending that storm sewer west to 9th and then kind of up into the neighborhoods to catch some of that excessive flow.
Is that out of the general fund?
Yeah, that's out of the general fund. Water fund. Source of supply, nothing too crazy there. Power and pumping, just a minor increase in utility rates. Purification, we've got a reserve in there for plant design. You know, depending on where we're going to take a look at that. It's probably going to be at least a year in design, I would think, before we can start construction. So if we're looking at construction in 19, we'd need to design it next year. Or push it out. And then we've also got in there tower design under the distribution process. And I'll go back and I think that tower design is included in that 8 million down on the bottom for the cost. So assuming That the October, court date goes well. We would close on both sites, would get the east site, and then we would start design on those towers.
What are we doing with the existing one?
It'll be coming down.
Can't put one bigger one there.
There's not enough room. Yeah. Those two sites that we're looking at, the smallest one over on the east side is 1.5 acres. And that's about the minimum size you want for that size of a tower. The site here, the problem is that we're trying to go to a one pressure zone, and that tower does not match the elevation of the two new towers. So it throws off the pressure zones.
You'd probably get overflow.
Yeah.
Your pressure is gonna be so much better if that one's gonna be lower, so the power would constantly be overflowing.
And it's not a big enough site to build a bigger tower on.
I was talking to John.
Oh, she stole
This is
Dennis's
yours.
book.
Yeah, this is your book.
So no, that site would be vacant. We painted that a few years ago. No, it wasn't 16, that was last year. Gabe was working at Stockwell's.
It's been a while.
14?
15, probably 14, 15.
And it was, and it's a fair, I mean, it's fairly tight, so when we sandblasted, we had some issues with those houses to the west, where I think they had to wash off the houses a few times.
We could empty it, leave it there for decoration or something.
Well, I mean, is there, I'm just gonna throw a stupid question out there, is there any kind of storage, for fire department? I mean, there's nothing that can be used for?
I mean, it's all looped, it'd have to be moved, and even then, like Raleigh said, the system, if we go to a one pressure zone system, the pressure's gonna be so high that it's gonna be coming out the top, or higher, I should say.
We can look at giving it to.
We can sell it.
Community, but typically they're sold for $1.
It's scrap.
That other one we couldn't get sold.
But
This one's
that
bigger.
one's different though. I mean, this one's definitely, has some life cycle in it.
This one's 250,000 gallons, the other one's 50. There's not much of a market for a 50,000 gallon water tank. So I'm not saying we sell it, but maybe the market's a little bit bigger, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Well, yeah, there are cell towers on top of it.
Tear it down, they're gonna have to put a tower up there.
Yep.
Keep dual towers.
And,
It's not our problem.
and as far as the two new towers, I'm not overly enthused to put cell towers on top of those because they're a pain in the butt. Yep.
Verizon and Berkeley's,
They are. Because when we had to paint it, it was our responsibility to take the antennas down and make sure they were still operating and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, for the amount of money that we get from rent, it's not worth the pain in the butt to work around those towers.
it's about 17,000 a year. That's not.
So unless they're gonna sweeten the deal considerably, my recommendation is not to put anything on the new towers as far as communication towers for private sector. So we got through the tower construction. Administration. We're looking at adding another staff person in public works, so we plumped it in there because they have more money than everybody else. Because we're getting to that point, we had how many part-timers this year? 5 part-timers in the summer. It'd be nice to have an extra hand during snow removal. There may be times in the winter where it's a little bit slow, but an extra body in a truck always helps. And then during the summertime, we're short. It's nice, the part-timers can make up some of the difference, but it's nice to have a full-time, yeah. They can't do everything that we do. They're okay for patching. asphalt.
They were paint hydrants.
Yep, paint hydrants and patching asphalt.
They had 50 hydrants, they couldn't even get taps off the poles. Big fuel returns for all.
And that's the price you pay.
That's right.
Yep.
Young green, they're green. They didn't put balls on them.
And then Encode, AutoCAD, SCADA, that's our annual software stuff as we increase the SCADA system. And then we've got the anticipated debt service for well number 7, that's the Sioux Falls well. And then we're retiring the Stone Ridge Booster Station after 18. The engineers, the transfer 1/3 of the cost for the engineering costs. We share that equally between the sewer, the water, and the general fund. That's what it is. We're transferring out of the water department to the general fund to cover the engineer costs for the our city engineer. Not cheap, inexpensive. Efficient. It's efficient. Ooh. That hurt. The electrical fund on page 37 is just our street light account.
Are those all converted now?
Yep. They're starting to, Sioux Valley at least is starting to convert those over to LEDs as they go through town.
They maintain it, right?
Some,
How I understand.
the ones that we've put in, Aspen, Sioux, Holly, Split Rock, those are ours. We maintain those. But the other ones in town, they maintain. So that costs.
Go on and off all the
Hmm?
time. All of them go on and off all the time.
They're on sensors.
When I walk by it, I go,
Well, if that's the case, let us know, because then we'll let them know, because that's a faulty.
yeah,
They were already on and then they go off, it's either a bulb or a photo line on top of that.
it goes, it does it all. As you walk by it, there's a number on each light, or I would say most of the lights, and then just call Sioux Valley, call that number in Sioux Valley.
Yeah.
That's, I've done that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the sewer fund, the sewer enterprise fund, lift station loan principal is what we will have with the state. The biosolids loan principal, that's a guess right at the moment, until we get that finalized. And then one thing that we may be looking at on that, a couple of things that we'll be looking at on that, extending the term out. I don't necessarily like going much past 10 years, but we may need to just for a cash flow issue. And then all of that improvement isn't necessarily wastewater associated. Some of it should be coming out of the general fund, so I'll need to take a look at that breakdown to see where those costs are, so that there may be some transfers from the general fund back to wastewater to help with that debt service. Collection and disposal. We've got our SDC charges in there. We're anticipating 55 homes. Our normal lift station rehab. TV work. I think we've got everything TV'd in town. We're pretty close. So that's to go out and do new subdivisions. We TV camera all of the sewer lines before they start pumping them full of stuff. And we'll probably start going out and rechecking some of those older lines that we TV'd a long time ago.
What's the reception been to the change in that SDC?
Haven't heard anything. Yeah, as far as the contractors go, they should see no change in their bill when they come in and get a building permit. So that was a wash. Golf course. The big one down there that we're gonna have to talk about is the restroom building. We've talked about replacing that one. We're looking at, it's out on, yeah. It's the one that we pump the water out of the pond, and then we've got a holding tank. And we've had some issues with the holding tank, because the neck is broken. So we've talked about replacing that with a new restroom structure with an actual water line with potable water and a grinder pump and a pipeline to the sanitary sewer system instead of a holding tank. Because even last weekend or the weekend before during the tournament, state tournament, we had to get out and pump it. That might have been due to the rain. Like I said, there's a faulty neck on the tank. So $100,000 might be on the light end. You know, it's not a concession stand. It's just a men's and women's restroom, and then we've got to run about 1,200 feet of water and 1,200 feet of sewer.
We're not
So-
looking at putting it back in that same location either, we're gonna better position it between 2 and 16, that open area where that pile of brush usually sits.
Are we adding a person? One entity?
No,
That's just Kelly.
Oh, that's just her. Oh, okay.
so that 100's probably a little light, maybe. We're probably going to be looking more like 125 to 150 if we have to run 1,200 feet of sewer and water.
I thought they were wanting to redo that one right at the bottom of the hill.
Nope, that one will stay. That's the old concession building. Zane would like to tear it down.
Tear it down, yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, but it gets used quite a bit by ladies, especially, that don't go up to the clubhouse. They just buzz over to the number 10 tee. Because the ladies' tee doesn't have to go up on top of the hill.
Oh,
Yeah, so if they finish the first 9, 1 through 9, they can just go from 9 all the way over to the 10 tee box. They don't have to go up the hill.
She's going from single to family coverage.
And then we're near 17 of 20 for the bonds on the building, on the clubhouse. In the pro shop, can't say there's any changes there. In the lounge, same thing. Everything's, no major projects, no major changes. And same thing with the community room. Replacing the dance floor, which is kind of an annual, or not an annual, but a regular cost.
What happened to their computer system?
It crashed.
I mean, I know, I guess, is that what it was?
The server, they have a central location server, it went down, it crashed. I'm working with Zane to try to figure out, just to get everything entered correctly and get it back in, but they did come Sunday and install a new server and get it back.
Oh,
up
they
and
were on
running.
their system.
Yep. Darn computers.
Did we take a look at, what the increase of the health insurance costs were this year? If we were gonna try to hold those costs to what we did last year?
We could take a look at those.
Well, I think we have to make some inroads here someplace, so that would be a thought of mine is we keep our costs the same as last year and the employees absorb the increase, and I think it was only 6%. Otherwise, it's kind of runaway train here going.
That'd be the way to do it gradually.
We'll look at those comparisons. And that's it for expenditures. We'll be making some fairly significant cuts between now and Monday. Monday, I hope to give you a balanced budget
Don't touch any of my stuff.
in projects.
Just take the whole budget, and we'll
So no, I'll find some places. We'll,
I'll find some
I will.
I think we just need to come up with a list of priorities for the next 5 years.
Yep.
I'd like
We
to-
have a CIP list that I put together and revise every year according to projects.
Yep.
I have a CIP list for street. But it's not. Utility improvements, the water tower.
Yep, they're all on the CIP list. The problem is we come to, as we've talked about before, sales tax is relatively flat throughout the state. So even though we have a CIP list and projects slated, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can afford to do them.
Our sales tax revenues make our much for budget.
Oh, yeah. Makes up half of it. Basically, it's our second largest. So if you look at it, we're gonna bring in 2.6 million in property taxes, and we're gonna bring in 2.6 in sales tax. So it's been increasing. I mean, in 2013.
If we built in a 1% or 3% increase, that's not, I mean, that's effectively what, 20 grand.
Yeah. And I'll take a look before we finalize the revenue side to see where we're coming at it this year. But we're seeing a little bit of a decrease from previous years.
We had talked before that we could potentially break that out by month, that's what I'd like to see, is, you know, there's been a smaller amount that usage hasn't come back.
Yeah, we've got it all broken out by month as we receipt it in.
Year over year, month over month.
And sales tax is so hard to track though, that's, you know,
Because sometimes they cut the month short. Sometimes they,
it's all, really all in the state, I don't know when they cut it off, every time. Sometimes they'll cut it off on the 21st, sometimes it'll be the 23rd, sometimes it'll be the 20th. Those couple days can make a huge.
yeah, we haven't seen an impact from Huset's expanding to 2 days a week versus closing. We didn't see an impact from Automania. We haven't seen an impact from Amazon. But now, Airbnb
We have a lot of those properties.
is gonna be stepping up. So it's surprising statewide that sales tax revenues are down with the Amazon agreement.
Yeah. It must be, I don't know, I suppose part of it's
And with the market,
part, they're not spending as much.
well, debt levels going up, markets are up, off the charts, but I don't get what happens. It is,
Consumer spending's down.
why is debt levels going up? So,
It might just be refined, they've already got one of them.
Well, that might be more of a South Dakota thing, that consumer spending's down, other than elsewhere. Well, if you look at wages in South Dakota, they aren't rising basically at all versus, compared to what are we at, 3% unemployment roughly, or lower? Usually there's a relationship, if you've got that low of an unemployment rate, your wages go up, and that hasn't happened. So if that's the case, you've got people working more jobs, part-time jobs, so.
Okay, so what are we doing Monday, you said?
We'll go over, I will give you hopefully a balanced budget Monday night, and I'll show you what got cut out. First meeting in September, we've got our first hearing. No, we can make some tweaks if we need to, after September, but we need to have probably a special meeting or two in there if we make major changes now that the
What time?
6.
You have to do the first, it's an ordinance, you have to do the first reading, the first meeting in September, second meeting in September, and then. Yeah, and new laws, you can't make major changes to your first reading, your second reading.
If you do, then you've got to,
If you do, you gotta
Gotta
start
start
all
over.
over, and you have to have a special meeting.
so we can do it.
Do it. Either way, you're gonna have